Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about the movie Harvest of Fear. We learned about GMOs in this movie, and we learned about some pros and cons. Some pros are it helps prevent crops from getting viruses, which helps farmers. It helps them increase their crop, and it also helps increase their revenue. It also means that we are using less pesticides, and pesticides are said to be really bad for the environment and also really bad for us to ingest. Not only that, but GMOs have been tested more than any other food. Scientists are really on top of testing them and making sure that they're safe for us to eat, and if they're not safe for us to eat, whatever modification they made to the food isn't safe for us, they do let us know, or they tell that company, do not sell this, do not give this to humans. There's also some cons. The cons are we are eating GMOs and we have no clue that we're eating them, which is a little worrisome. I think that if they're making a big change in our food, that if there's a big change in our food, that we should know about it as consumers. There's also the argument that we're tampering with nature, which I'm not really sure if I'm for that argument, because it seems like in the movie they mentioned that we've been modifying food and crops for generations and generations, and for us to say that GMOs as a modification is true, but to say we're not going to eat them because of that isn't very fair, because even organic potatoes are modified at some point throughout history. And then there's also, this one's the one that kind of gets me, there's no definitive proof that GMOs are safe for us to eat, which kind of bothers me a little bit. I mean, they don't even feel the need to label it on our food, which is also worrisome, just because we're eating it. We need to kind of know that we're eating it. There's a lot of groups that are for and a lot of groups that are against GMOs. One group that's against are radical environmental groups such as Greenpeace. Greenpeace is in part of the US, and they tried to warn the public about GMOs, and they were really I think they were over dramatic about it. They started targeting different companies such as Kellogg's and Campbell's, and they were directly targeting these companies and then going to them and making a big scene about it. And I really don't think that it was that, like, I don't think they should have taken that stance. I don't think they should have been that over dramatic about it. Most of them are very skeptical of the scientific evidence that they do have for GMOs. Most of them choose to ignore it, or most of them don't believe it. So they believe that we are being fed very harmful chemicals. Not only that, but a lot of them believe that we're killing off different animals, such as the monarch butterfly that became one of their almost, I guess, mascot. They started saying that the monarch was being killed off, and that wasn't true at all. And then there's industrial scale farmers who are completely for GMOs because it helps save their crops. They like it more than they do pesticides. The crops they are able to have more crops, and not only that, but that means they have more money. So a lot of industrial scale farmers are for GMOs. There's also organic farmers, and organic food only takes up 2% of the food that is consumed in the world. And people, if given the choice between genetically modified and organic, people are going to choose organic. But farming, they believe that farming should be done in harmony with nature, so organic farmers are against GMO. But it's interesting because organic farmers have this organic pesticide, it's called Bt, which kills off caterpillars that are harmful to their crops. And I thought it was interesting that people like Greenpeace are protesting the fact that we're killing off monarchs and making them move to different locations, when even organic farmers are killing off caterpillars. And I just thought it was interesting that no matter what we do, we're killing off different pests and insects. So I thought it was almost ignorant of them to be protesting this when they don't even know that their organic food is also killing off different insects. And then there's also agricultural biotech companies such as Monsanto and Aventis. They are typically pro-GMOs, from what the movie is told, because they say that there's pesticides are kind of going away as a business, that it's a dying business. And so when companies like Monsanto take over GMOs and they start genetically modifying food, they are able to make more money. The thing is with these companies is they really are on top of scientists. Like there was an example where the Cry9C corn was not approved for human digestion, and so they decided, the companies released a statement saying, do not give this to humans. You can give it to livestock, but you can't give it to humans. And so I thought that was interesting. They are typically, especially Monsanto, is determined to introduce new foods with GMOs, so a lot of new foods are going to have or be genetically modified. Then there's also federal agencies such as USDA, which is in charge of safe growth of produce, and then there's the FDA, which is in charge of making sure the produce is safe to eat, or produce or just food in general. And then the EPA, which is involved with food use of pesticides. Not only that, but the EPA is in charge of keeping farmers and different companies accountable for their actions. So if they say they're not allowed to give the Cry9C GMO to humans, and the EPA is in charge of making sure that that doesn't get in any of our food. There's also retail food companies like Grocery Manufacturers of America. I think, from what I understood, they were pro-GMO. They said that the protesters, such as Greenpeace and other ones, do not represent the large majority of the public. So a lot of people are not informed about GMOs. A lot of people don't really care that they're eating them, and so they claim that the protesters are not a large majority of the population. And then there's also American consumers. There's a large worry that American consumers are going to eventually revolt against GMOs, which is interesting. I'm not really sure why we would be completely against them. Like Europe, they have an excuse because GMOs take away from their cuisines. It takes away from their culture, whereas in the US, we just want food because we're hungry. I don't think GMOs are really going to ever be questioned at large in the US, because typically we trust our regulators. It said in the movie that 7 out of 10 Americans trust regulators such as EPA or USDA. We are trusting people that are giving us our food. We are more trustworthy than Europe, and so I don't think that's really going to be an issue. And then I get to talk about what I think about GMOs. I think that GMOs are not necessarily a bad thing. I'm pro-GMOs. I think that it's an interesting subject that I want to learn more about. I think that I know that I eat GMOs all the time, and I just wish that it was labeled a little more to warn people. I was eating dinner tonight and I was checking to see, does this say genetically modified organism or GMO in place on here, and none of them did. That still worries me that they don't feel the need to warn us. It's almost as if they're hiding something from us. So for the most part, I'm pro-GMO, except the part that worries me is with the Cry9C. It wasn't approved for human consumption, as I mentioned. It was approved for different livestock, but farmers mixed the Cry9C GMO with just organic corn and other corns, and it got into some of our food, and it was mostly Taco Bell that they found it in, their Taco Bell tortilla shells. But they also found in other parts of the world, like Japan and different parts of Europe, where it had traveled. And that bothers me just a little bit, that farmers, it might have been an accident, but it just bothers me that it wasn't approved for us to eat, and yet it's in our food still. I think there should be a lot stronger regulations on different things like that. But other than that, I'm not against it at all, and I'm kind of pro-GMO. I eat them, and I've had no issues so far. So other than that one issue with Taco Bell, I have no opposition of it. So yeah, thanks for watching.